Hey, it's Drybear. We are imminently expecting an official response from the creative director Joel at Funcom regarding their dev responses over the last week. We have some that we haven't covered yet on the channel, so we're going to continue to do that today while we wait for their official response. As soon as that goes up, we'll watch it together on stream, and then I'll post a video recapping it for you guys as well. Let's get back into the responses we haven't seen yet with this question from the community. Will there give more options for solo players in the deep desert, being able to hide in the dunes like a Fremen, or the exploration Orny to be more agile and without rockets? Now, they talked a little bit about what they want to do with the Scout Ornithopter, potentially making it slower if you put rockets on it and faster if you don't, and maybe potentially giving some more buffs to the Assault Ornithopter. But I think this is a great question to kick off with, because this is kind of like, you know, probably one of the top 3 issues for the game right now. And the response from the developer was, Fremen secrets are only known to the Fremen. We will address what that means in some time. However, we will make the Scout Ornithopter be more maneuverable when spec'd for that. So again, their plan is to make the Scout Ornithopter faster if it has no weapons on board. Hopefully this means while it has storage, so for the people that want to be a vulture or a rat in the deep desert and just fly in, get the resources, and get out, I think that needs to be viable gameplay if they expect the deep desert to be even remotely playable for anyone outside of a guild or organization. But we'll see kind of what the official patch notes say once we get to that. Next is a rather fun one. How difficult was it to balance the alternative timeline you created with the books, and how did that influence some decisions in the game and the story moving forward? Only 25-ish hours in, and it's one of the best survival games I haven't played in a while. The dev response was, it wasn't hard. We figured out that the alternate timeline at that point was mostly a matter of extrapolating out from the core ideas. The rules of the universe remain the same, so elements like dew reapers or sandworms or spice could easily be built in. The storyline was where we had more freedom to play, but luckily Frank Herbert provided a lot of threads with the concept of the Golden Path and the Bene Gesserit breeding program. For us, it was a lot of fun to try and imitate the beats of Herbert's original stories, but with a different set of characters and different set of objectives. He was a master of hinting at a lot while saying very little, and our pleasure was in expanding things out based on his teases. Been a lot of fun. Next is something a little bit more meat and potatoes, and I think this is kind of what a lot of people are asking right now. Is just the focus right now is on the end game loop of Dune Awakening. Landsraad is broken, this player says. Tiles being claimed within seconds of going live. Worlds are dominated by large guilds and heavily one-sided on the faction front. No room to even compete. You're left with defecting or just plain quitting. It should be overhauled IMO. Control points are scored unrealistically low. Would take days of camping to win a slot. Meanwhile, a mass handoff clears it in no time. Mechanically unbalanced, dominated by Zerg guilds, leaving no room for solo players, small guilds, or even large guilds of you're on the side with a lower player base to contribute. This leaves players disengaging with the system entirely and sucks the fun out. My question is, are you going to fix it? And the response from Joel, their creative director, is, we will continue to look at the Landsraad and balance things as we go forward. A bit of a non-answer, but pretty true. There are multiple activities beyond handing in resources that require people to do things that cannot be stockpiled. We'll continue to add activities. On servers that are heavily dominated by a single faction, balancing features will begin to kick in, but it has only been 2 weeks, so give this some time to get to work. And finally, the third faction, which is most likely to be Fremen at this point, will change the entire dynamic when it comes online, so we'll see how that goes overall. I think this is kind of an interesting topic in general. Like, they're saying that there's going to be some balancing factions. Like, there are servers right now that are either entirely dominated by Atreides or entirely dominated by Harkonnen. I would argue that most players in the game, like more than 50%, are Atreides, just because it's from the movies, but there are, you know, servers that are dominated by one or the other. And because the way the Landsraad is set up, because it's like a finite amount of contribution, once that contribution is met for a single Landsraad activity or task, once it's revealed, and then once that task is done, no one can contribute to it anymore. It's like an open window that closes when it's done. If you have a competitive or high population server, it means that the second that task pops up, at whatever time of the day it pops up, it means that the guild that is hyper competitive on that server, especially very popular server, they can instantly finish, like they can finish that task either in a matter of hours for, you know, medium pop, or very competitive servers can finish it in under an hour, which means that if you weren't there when the task popped up at that exact time of day, competitive guilds can finish it, close it out, and then no one else can contribute to that task at all. Like once it's done, right? So it's very much like an open window close, which I think is not really conducive to anything other than hardcore large size guild operations that are there and online the second the task appears, and they're there to complete it as soon as it's done, and then nothing else follows. Next is a rather short one. It's just a yes no kind of thing, but this player is asking, hey, you've offered a ton of cosmetics and building sets, so like the Observer building set for the Twitch drop, the Caladan Palace building set from the Atreides homeworld as part of the Ultimate Edition, and you know, potentially more coming through DLCs and season pass bonuses and things like that. And this player is asking, hey, given the increasing real world money cost and inconvenience of getting these items, will you be offering these or other items as free to play options to grind these or get these in the future? And the response is nope, no plans on that. If you didn't get the Ultimate Edition for the Caladan building set, then there is no chance for you to get it otherwise. That is the only way to get it, and they will not be offering those kinds of things through various other means in the future at all. That is an exclusive reward just to those. Here's an interesting one, and it's kind of like to this topic. So a lot of people that have been telling me that they, until they see changes in the deep desert, they're going to be chilling or slowing down on Dune Awakening because the end game loop just isn't keeping them. And so the question here from the player is, do you have plans to improve the comeback after a break mechanics for solo players while keeping the needed space cleaning mechanics in the game, things like attrition or damage to your base? And Funcom responds with, the game supports you taking a break for almost 4 weeks. You can get just about just under 30 days of power and generation for your base for you to log on. And we know that in Haga Basin, at least, your base is safe as long as it's powered. So we have that there. If you fill your base fully with a high tier generator and before your base gets unpowered for having defaulted on your taxes, for the future, we'll also be looking at adding mechanics to support easier recovery for taking an extended break. Now, you could also just take the base replicator and copy your base loadout before you take off so that if it gets destroyed, you can rebuild it. But there's no guarantee that your spot won't be taken. Even now, like we have a guild headquarters where people have started building really close to the headquarters and kind of encroaching on that space. So even with having your base powered, you still have people that might be building on top of it or next to it or overcoming it if you're not there, or even if you are there, it might still happen anyways. Here's a quick one. Is the third faction going to be House Corrino? Because it's listed as helping to keep the balance of power between the two main factions. And the Funcom response was, no, it's not House Corrino. I think at this point, it's pretty much guaranteed to be the Fremen. They've kind of mentioned that as being the third faction. They've teased it many times over their dev streams. Now, they could have been baiting us and trying to get us to fall for this trap, and it could be a different faction, but I think a lot of what they've been saying has been pointing to it being the Fremen. Another great question is, when will we get Suspensor elevators? And this is actually, they mentioned that the elevators, the Suspensor elevators were actually in their original plans. They got cut for scope. Like, they just didn't make it into the original release because it just wasn't, it was too much. They couldn't get it working. They couldn't polish it out. So the question is, will there be Suspensor elevators? Now, the last time this question was asked, their executive producer mentioned that they cut it completely. They didn't make the scope, so they just kind of turned it off and haven't talked about it since. And he said he was going to go talk to the building team to see if it's on their radar because he wasn't sure. However, the response this time around was likely to happen. Again, their EP said it was cut. It's not, not on the schedule. It's not on the calendar, so no one's working on it, but they had started the work on it at some point. So likely to happen means that it's, since they did start the work on it at some point, they could pick it up and work and finish it at some point as well. And they're saying it's pretty likely to happen. It probably won't be for the very immediate future. Definitely not for the July update that they're planning, and potentially couldn't even be in the next quarterly update, but it's something that could happen maybe in 6 months to 12 months from now, depending on when they decide to put it back online. Next is a great question. Do you plan to enable character transfer to a different server siege, mainly of the skip to main story and keep the level? This is huge because there are a lot of people, as the game progresses and certain regions start to solidify, like maybe your world started high pop and died off and now it's low pop, or maybe it's low pop and you liked it that way and then it got high pop, or maybe you just want to go play it with friends in general. There's a lot of people now that are wanting to jump servers or wanting to jump worlds. There's even people in the community that have an opening in their area and some people want to move over, but the idea of starting the main, the main story quest over again, and most importantly, having to re-level all of your classes, like doing all of the class class storylines that are like, you know, sub-segments of like 6 to 10 quests in a row for each of the 5 classes. Plus you have to level your character up to 200 again. Plus you have to re-progress all through all the tiers. I feel like the cost of starting over in Dune Awakening is a little bit high for a survival game. If you were to just be able to keep your, like, your character level and also keep your, like, tutorial progression and keep your class progression, but that you could start over another world, I think that would be awesome. If they wanted to do world resets, that would be cool too. Like, they could do full resets where like everyone starts over at the same time, or you could do like a transfer slash, you know, rollover where you can go to a server that's existed for a while. You can go to that server and then just, you'll keep your progression and start back at the bottom of Haga Basin South. That would be fine. But the idea of starting over and having to redo all of your class quests for all 5 of the classes in order to unlock all of your talents and then do all of your leveling all over again just feels very daunting, and it kind of discourages people from starting over if they may be on a server or setup that doesn't work for them anymore since the launch of the game. And the response from Funcom is between sieges coming soon, i.e. full visiting with building rights. So you can freely go between sieges and be able to build and assist and be part of that if you'd like to, which really only matters for Haga Basin anyways. And between worlds will likely be possible in the future, but not in the short term, which means that they don't really have the functionality coming very soon to be able to jump worlds with your character. Now, hopefully this means that they might consider other options where maybe if you've progressed one character to the maximum on one world, that if you go to the other world, you have the option to do like an expedited option. There's already an option for, you know, not having to do the tutorial again, which is useful. But again, the big blocker is your class progression, your quests, your one-time contracts, and the MSQ, all of those being major limitations on you being able to actually like go through and get caught up on another world. Next is an interesting one. This player says, can you make it easier to reach the bank and player sailboards without having to travel all the way to location? And 2, will there be some kind of vehicle insurance or adjustments to rebuilding without going through the extreme process of rebuilding? Thank you, or enjoying the game. The response is we will look into adding some additional convenience to these features, but it's important for us to have certain features that require you to travel to the social area cities. I have a comment on this that I'll give in just a second. And as for the insurance, we don't want losing your vehicle to be a catastrophic setback, so we are looking into ways to ease the loss in specific situations, but getting eaten by the sandworm will always come with a hefty cost though. Honestly, I don't feel like the insurance is like a huge deal. Personally for me, I think if you're going into an area that is going to be highly contested, I think having backup vehicles is a big part of it. If you're going into the deep desert with your one and only Mark IV Scout Ornithopter and you lose it, I think that being a big loss is going to be just part of the planning of survival games. Survival games are all about attrition and having, you know, insurance plans that you've built, being able to like claim or file an insurance claim for your vehicle if you lost in the deep desert and you have no backups, I think is something that they probably should be very careful about implementing, because then it means that vehicle loss is just meaningless. Like there's no downside to it at all. But it is kind of cool that they're thinking about it. Now, the other thing that I hope that they do, because I think it would be a very big addition to the game and something that helps solve some of the solo player issues right now, is I think they need a way for you to be able to buy from the player market and have that go to your base storage. What I mean by this is, you know, one of the suggested solutions for solo players and small group players to be able to, you know, circumnavigate the PvP situation in the deep desert, or the large group zerging situation in the deep desert, is that you can go to the auction house and buy things that you normally would get from the deep desert. However, there's kind of a downside and problem with that, right? Because anything you buy from the auction house goes into your personal inventory. So if you want to go to the auction house and buy a large amount of material, something that you would normally get from the deep desert, so that kind of suggested gameplay loop where you say, I'm going to go farm a bunch of money in Haga Basin, and then I'm going to use that Solari to buy materials that I would otherwise need a Zerg guild to get in the deep desert. It kind of gets shot by the fact that you have to have room in your inventory to carry it with you. So if you could either have auction house or marketplace items go to your base storage, or maybe you can build a like auction house specific, like a marketplace storage box that only the marketplace can interact with. You could go to the marketplace and buy large amounts of what you need and have it go to a storage box that makes sense. That would make it a lot more accessible to be able to go to the marketplace and buy things like spice melange or whatever else without having to have a large guild to deal with it. And I think that would go a long way in making that be part of the, the pressure release valve for smaller groups wanting to contribute to tier 6 progression. Next, this player says, can we expect further improvements to the social aspect of the game? As it stands right now, there isn't much of an incentive to interact with other players or talk to them. I'd love to see more moats, costumes, towns, cities, etc. And the dev response is, for sure, we will keep adding to and evolving our social features in the game, and there are currently in development and on the way more emotes, costumes, and we'll keep evolving our existing social hubs with adding additional content and reasons to go there. I think they need a lot more building sets that would help make the game feel a lot more interesting. You kind of chew through the ones you have and they're very functional for what they do, but I feel like we need a lot more added to the game building set wise, and having more costumes, more variants, more swatches, just more like customization features I think would go a long way. This player asked an interesting question. What are your thoughts on adding missions that involve raiding low tier spaceships, freighters, or Sardaukar ships mid-flight? So like more interceptor or interdiction ideas, just add a variety to the game, which is a really cool idea. And Papa Joel says, if we let you raid a Sardaukar ship with an actual Sardaukar instead of those terrible chome mercs they keep hiring, you'd be killed. Interesting idea though, we'll keep it in mind. So not really like anything actionable here, and he's convinced that the Sardaukar are so far above the players that would play there that you wouldn't be able to prepare well enough to not just get completely owned by them, but at least it's on their radar, maybe. This player asks, will you add farming features? So growing crops, a very common thing in survival games. And the response is nope. Maybe one day, but not in the near future. This would be really cool because especially around the planetologist trainer, there's a whole bunch of like greenhouse stuff and growing plant stuff, and even just getting that building set would be really cool, but even adding like farming options to grow your own plant fibers or, add other things to it, they would be really cool to kind of add to the experience of the game, or maybe even have plants that you can harvest dew from or something like that. But the response is not in the near future, not really on their radar right now. Next is, will there ever be a mini map or map overlay so it's easier to navigate while driving without having to bring up the map? I don't have a problem with bringing up the world map every time I need to look around to see materials. I also just wish, but my one request there would be to make the world map be a little bit more performant. Even on a a higher end machine, opening the full map can be a bit of a multi-second thing where it pops up, it loads everything. They have these animations of dust moving around and all these moving elements, and sometimes it feels like opening the map is a little bit more cumbersome, and that's what's driving me to want a mini map. Not necessarily that the map isn't functional, but more that just it's not snappy in opening and closing it. So that would be my request, but here's the question from the player asking about a mini map. The response from Papa Joel is no. We actually had a mini map for a while in internal development, and I asked the team to remove it. Mini maps draw the eye away from the world and distract from the experience. Instead, we moved the design to a more intentional focus on world elements, scanning to have resources show in 3D space, or hazards like quicksand be something that you can plan your route around. Vehicle scanners will be your friend when dodging quicksand, but also just learning to recognize it visually will be of great help. Next, this player asks, can we get a top-down building view? There's actually, if you look at Once Human, one of the closest competitors to Dune Awakening in my eyes, Once Human has a creative mode. So kind of like Minecraft, where you can play normally, but they also have a creative mode in Once Human where you can detach your camera from your character and look down from above and build that way, which I think is huge. A lot of people love creative modes in building games and in survival games so that they can kind of more easily plan out their build without having to suspensor belt up into the air and land somewhere and then suspensor belt down and have to be in exactly the right spot. Creative mode allows you to move around there. So will there be a top-down building or a free cam building version for the game? And the response from Funcom is there are currently no plans to add this. So they have no plans to do a creative mode, a top-down mode, a different camera, or a detached camera mode for building. They plan to make it so that when you're building, you're only doing it from your normal gameplay combat camera for your character. This player asks, will there be PvE enemy types varied other than humans? They're pretty proud about it being humans, especially with the focus on Landsraad. They think it's all about, human to human conflict in there. But this player is asking for animals or monsters or various other things. And the dev response was, we are considering more enemy types long term. So again, not in the short term, not on their radar for right now, which I think is kind of an unfortunate. I think if they're trying to add more opportunities for PvE PvE or various aspects that can be more PvE focused. I think that for the people that don't want PvP, having more enemy types or more difficult enemies can go a long way into making that feel fresh and interesting if you're trying to keep those players engaged outside of just the deep desert. This player asked an awesome question, which is, could you consider adding a hotkey to change seats in vehicles? It would be awesome if while you're going on a buggy run, solo at least, to be able to go farm minerals, you could hit a hotkey to jump to the turret seat and hit a hotkey to jump to the driver's seat. Even just that by itself would be huge. And then when you're like at an assault ornithopter, it'd be nice to jump between seats if you have people coming in and out of the vehicle, if you have a small group that you're working with, but most specifically the buggy in general. So will there be hotkeys to change seats? And the response is, yep, it'll be coming very soon. One of the first few patches for the game will come in either July or August. So being able to hotkey change seat locations in like the buggy most specifically is coming very soon, which is a huge win, especially for a lot of solo players out there that are just doing a quick mining run on their buggy. Another good one. Are there any plans to implement a way to change your character, how your character looks, accessing the character customization through some sort of cosmetic surgeon paid with Solari? So being able to change your character customization, I'm sure many people have already, like, they started with an idea that they liked for their character, but they would like to change it now. Maybe they just want to change the looks up. So will we be able to do that in game? And the response was positively, yes, there will be added in a future update. The team is already working on it. So expect some news on it soon, and we will start discussing our post-launch content releases. So soon you will be able to change your character customization out on a character that's already been created. And that more or less gets us caught up with the dev responses we've had over the last week or so while we wait for the Papa Joel response coming soon, so be on the lookout for that video. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.